this is when sort of our nervous system, which is determines whether we're in that state, in like an excited state or a calm state, is all out of whack, right? So could you explain a little bit more about exactly what nervous system dysregulation means? Because we're hearing that a lot lately, and maybe some people don't know.
Yeah, I love how you explain all of that, by the way. So
Thank you.
the nervous system basically has three states. One is, it's called ventral vagal. Vagal comes from the vagus nerve, which is our longest cranial nerve in the body. And it goes all the way from the base of our brain to all the organs, our internal organs. That's why a lot of people struggle with digestive issues, and that have nothing to do with their physical health. It's a somatic symptom of trauma.
Wow.
So, yeah. So when you are in ventral vagal, that's called the social engagement system. You are present, you're connected to yourself, you're connected to other people. That's that beautiful, connected state. And then the next one is called sympathetic. So that's fight or flight. And that's when, if we feel like there's a threat, we want to be able to run away or fight, which is perfect, which is, great that we have that ability. And that's where we would go into anxiety, maybe rage, really intense stress. And then if we feel like, okay, I can't run away or I can't fight, and these can also be emotional states, like I don't have the emotional capacity to set boundaries, to speak up for myself. That's also kind of a form of fight. Then I would go into freeze and shut down, and that's the dorsal vagal collapse. So you feel numb, you feel really overwhelmed, maybe you feel even dissociated, so you're like leaving your body. And that state is called preparation for death, because it's when, if you are, going to be hurt, you won't feel it. It won't be so painful because your body is numb, you don't feel anything. So I'm explaining it in this way to show that these are all really necessary, because if we are under threat, we need all of these states. But if it's a perceived threat and we get thrown into this collapse and we stay there for hours, days, even weeks, I have clients who can't even like imagine what it's like to be connected and present. That's what we work on. We don't work on eliminating all the states. We want all three of them. We work on shortening the time of being in each state, in the sympathetic and the dorsal.
Wow, that's incredible. So you can spend a triggered state for weeks. That's incredible. I actually know some people who spend more time triggered, like they're triggered so frequently that they're more time triggered than they are feeling calm and at peace. So does this affect men and women the same?
Yeah, I haven't seen any differences between men and women. Maybe, it has also to do with the specific situation that we're triggered in and the emotion that we express. Like women don't feel as comfortable with anger. So maybe men express more anger, whereas underneath that is sadness, but they're not showing it. A lot of my clients will get stuck. I experienced that too, in an emotion that is not actually the core emotion that's happening for them, because they feel really uncomfortable with the other one. So for me, for example, I can be angry like so easily. I don't mind anger, but sadness is like super scary. So I can be stuck in that anger for a long time, where actually if I just cry, I'm done. I'm good. I'm back to being regulated. So I guess in that sense, maybe there are some differences, but really I'm not aware of anything of, the general nervous system states.
Wow, that's interesting though, that different. So it depends on what emotion you're more comfortable being in, and it may not even be the actual feeling that you're actually feeling. So does this somatic work actually help you identify what the true underlying feeling is so that you can work through that?
So I actually found that a lot of the somatic field is really focused on sensations rather than emotions. And I
Mhm.
find like a lot of benefit in actually identifying your emotion that you're going through because it gives you information. Emotions give you information. So say if I'm feeling angry and I say I feel angry, then I know, okay, maybe someone overstepped my boundary. And so I'm angry.
Mm.
But if I say I'm feeling sad, and you know, if someone overstepped my boundary, I need to tell them that, and I need to, you know, express my need, right? So it gives me that information. That's what I'm needing. If I'm sad, maybe I need a hug or someone to comfort me so I don't feel lonely. So emotions give you that information, and so I find working with emotions is super important. I learned more about emotions from an amazing therapist. Her name is Hillary. I always mess up her name. Her book is about the change triangle. So if you look up Hillary the change triangle, she has two last names and I always mess it up, but it's really, really brilliant. And it does include the pieces about sensations in the body, but it's also about like labeling that emotion, feeling it in your body, allowing the energy of the emotion to move through your body and to feel it. And then if you get really anxious, if you feel shame or guilt, that kind of hides emotions. So that her work is a lot
Mm.
about that. The things that are hiding us, kind of protecting us from accessing the emotion. And once we access the emotion and it moves through, we come back to being grounded. We come back to ventral essentially. So we really need to do this work of feeling. And so a lot of us get distracted with the phone or shopping or drinking or whatever it is, you know, and it's not a criticism, it's just we are scared to feel. It feels intense, it feels overwhelming. So it's really learning how to stay in your body and feel an emotion. And my work is about first getting regulated. So first you get regulated, you feel present, and then you can stay with that emotion from that space of regulation.
Wow, that's a lot of really excellent information because if you connect the emotion and the sensation, then you get relief. And if you spend any amount of time in a trigger state, which I have many times, it sucks. It's so painful. It's like I would describe it as like hell. To be triggered for an extended period of time is a nightmare. And so in order to come back to center, to get back to your calm state, the desired state, knowing these strategies and how to move through these things is a life changer. It's an absolute lifesaver, which is why I wanted to do this episode with you, because I think that the work that you're doing has so much power to completely change lives for the better. And that's what we want on Hot Topics Live. So, podcast. So, tell me, what are some of these sensations we might feel if we are in a triggered state? Because I know initially I didn't know anything about this, right? This is all just part of my healing journey and me trying to figure out how to feel better, right? And so I started to learn to identify what the sensations were in my body. So how do we start that process?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. I mean, that's what happens to us. We want to figure it out and like not be in this hell as you describe, and
Yeah.
even use that trigger for healing because the triggered state is just reminding you, hey, here's a trauma that you haven't processed yet. Here's a trauma that you haven't felt fully yet. So here's the work you got to do, right? And of course, it's super painful. And it's really also healing once you learn to work with it. So the sensations, it might be you feel heaviness, you might feel constriction, you might feel tension, or you might also feel like really open and light and radiant in your chest, in your belly, in your throat, other areas in your body. And it's really, you know, how I recommend starting is just sitting with your body as it is now. Maybe you feel nothing. Maybe there's numbness, and that's what you notice. It's just noticing and practicing not judging it. Just being like, I notice in my chest, it feels numb, or I notice in my belly, it feels like someone is poking me almost, or or tingles or whatever sensations you feel, just naming that in a neutral sort of way and being able to stay with it, being able to stay and expand your ability to stay with it. For me, in the beginning, within like a few minutes, I was asleep of being in my body because it just felt so intense that I would immediately go into that dorsal collapse state and just fall asleep. My body was just protecting itself. So that's normal. You know, if you've experienced a lot of trauma, haven't worked with the body, maybe only talked about it, it's overwhelming. We store it in the body. We don't store it in the mind only. You know, we do create beliefs and, you know, thoughts out of it, but the sensations are the most overwhelming part.
Wow. I mean, I would agree with that for sure. So we start to become aware of them. And then are there like techniques with somatic healing that we can use to sort of really begin diving deeper into this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I share a lot of those. For example, you can look on YouTube, Butterfly Hug, that comes from EMDR. And it just